Well, hey friends, welcome to the Everyday Mulemanship podcast. I'm hanging out with my buddy Adam Leinen for the second time this morning. We just recorded a really, really good podcast that none of you are ever going to get to listen to because it actually didn't record Adam's voice. So it's a whole podcast of me just talking and then sitting there for a long time. And then I talk some more. So Adam, welcome back, my friend.
Good to be here.
So I appreciate you doing this twice in one day. Um,
Hey,
is
anytime.
it like at least like snowing up there today? Is it like miserable so you don't feel bad about sitting inside?
Yeah, it's cold. It was negative 13 2 nights ago. Last night was only -7. I
Yeah.
did go out and work with some mules. I was going to work with Miss Patty's mule from St. Croix. We brought
Oh,
that.
good. Yeah.
Uh,
You just
Sophie.
riding it for the winter or what are you doing?
Uh, well, it had some lameness issues, so she actually sent it home and says if you can use it, use it. And I was all going to do it, and she had an icicle about 6 inches from her eye, and her eye was sore, so we ended up doctoring that up.
Oh,
It was
yeah.
good bonding time. She's hard to catch, so it was fun.
Well, by the time this podcast actually airs, it's going to be springtime because this will probably come out like in March. So, you'll be listening to it then, thinking back of the icicle eye drops, um, and you won't be missing winter.
That's good.
Well, man, we had some good stuff on our on our first show,
We
uh,
did.
that I want to hit on again.
Sure.
Um, it's always kind of awkward, Adam, to do these again, like after we just went through some good stuff because the first time it always flows so nice, and it's a I don't know what's coming, which makes it good. And neither do you, which makes it good. So,
Yeah.
but there were some good points that we hit on that I want to share with our guests. And it's recording this time. It's recording this time, but
You got it.
I got it for sure. So we're not going to miss this, but you know, I probably my favorite part of our conversation, Adam, was talking about how, you know, mulemanship is lifemanship and all this stuff and relating it to what you do. And you're gonna have to introduce yourself again and tell people what you're into, what you do, and so they can get the full picture here. But I want to go back into that stuff. So introduce yourself and then we'll dive in.
Yeah, sounds good. Adam Leinen started shoeing and well full time shoeing horses and mules in probably '09. So I haven't been doing it as long as most farriers, it seems like. But we've got our fourth kid on the way here in March. We started hanging out with Ty about probably 4 years ago in St. Croix Falls, Wisconsin, and yeah, it's just shoeing horses. This all relates, and your faith. That's something we didn't really probably I didn't tap into as much on the last conversation, but
We were getting
um,
around to it, and
we
then also
were.
and then I got this notification: Adam's recording has stopped. I'm like, what? And because
Well,
you told me earlier, and I'm like, no, it looks good because I didn't have a notification yet, and then it popped up later on, so it was a little delayed on my end. But
you're good.
we'll get
You
into the
had a
faith this
box over
time.
your. There was a box over your face the whole time. I could only see your chin. So, well, I can do this, but no, it's good. I don't know if I introduced myself well or not, but it is.
Yeah, your
Um,
family's awesome. We love your family. We love when you guys come. The girls were extremely disappointed in you,
I
uh,
know.
and not showing up to Missouri. They were like, oh man, are you serious? Dang it. Ellie and Swayze they love hanging with Danica. She's a wonderful young lady, and
Yeah, Swayze and Weston got together really good too. They got a lot
that's
of the
yeah,
same.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, they played a lot at St. Croix this year, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's good.
yeah, that was the deal. We were kind of at the end of moving there, and gosh, we're just not going to be able to make it. Maddie's like, well, why don't you go by yourself? I go, I don't think that's possible with Ellie and Swayze. That they would not even talk to me if I didn't bring the kids, right?
Yeah, they would have been mad. Well, they were mad anyways, but then, since you didn't show up, they forgive you quickly because they forgot. So good thing
Hey,
with
there.
children. So
Yeah,
yeah. Um,
win-win.
so with shoeing, man, we had one thing I want to hit on again that just kind of flowed in was, you and I were talking about mistakes we've made. And I
Hmm.
think, as I'm reflecting on our conversation, and actually this is kind of fun to do this podcast immediately after we just had that conversation because
Yeah.
it actually gives me some time. It gave me a little time to reflect as I was waiting for it to upload, only to be disappointed. But anyways, I was thinking about our stories we shared, and we're going to share them again here in just a second. But like learning from mistakes and how important it is. And you and I, as we talked, it kind of brought a lot of emotion to the table, really, of like, I think that's kind of the process of life. We're here to be tested. We're here to make mistakes. And thank goodness we have Christ as our Redeemer, and we can be forgiven if we seek that, right? And
Yeah.
I've made a lot of mistakes. I've made so many mistakes, and I still will make mistakes. But these days, I find a lot of value in learning from other people's mistakes because I realize, if I just go at this whole mulemanship thing, like as if it's from, whatever, however long ago they were riding horses, which they think is like 7,000 years ago or whatever, right? Whatever, whatever. Let's just say 7,000 for the fun of it.
Hmm.
Going back then is, if man sees a horse for the first time or whatever. And if we're just learning from our own mistakes, I mean, we are so far behind. We like, well, do you think we can ride it? I don't know. Let's try it. Oh, get kicked in the face and you die.
Hmm. Yeah.
All right, well, let's try again. Get somebody
Yeah.
else. There's just not enough time to learn everything by yourself. I think it's important to have teachers around you, have people willing to share their mistakes so that you can learn, so that we can be better. I expect all of my students to be better than me, and that is a serious. I'm matter of fact about that. I want everybody that comes to me, I want them to be better, and I hope they are better because they have the opportunity in life to learn from my mistakes and from their other mentors and those mistakes plus their own mistakes, right? So there's just should we should all be like on a snowball effect of learning. Like it should just be getting better and better and better. And you've learned so many things and you've shared so many things with me about your horseshoeing business and the things that you run into. So I guess I'll start, Adam, with my story about losing my temper with Riata. So as I was telling you before, um, I had put a set of shoes on Cupcake, Sky's mule, and it was just kind of a freak deal. She jerked a foot away from me, and I don't even remember necessarily why. Something bothered her. I don't know. She jerked a foot and stuck that nail in the big fleshy part of my thumb, below my
Oh.
thumb, and it ripped it pretty good. It was a pretty nasty. I should have got stitches. I didn't, of course not.
Hmm.
Of course not. I just held it together and it's fine. Got a wicked scar now, but
Hmm.
you know, and you were telling me that hey, it is possible, and now that I reflect on it, I think I kind of did to have a little PTSD after it because I
Hmm.
was really very particular about shoeing after that, and this is what happened after that. My hand was sore, still, and I was just being, I just really babying it, like, when I'm working on these feet, just because I know that, oh, this is going to happen again.
Hmm.
Anyways, it was the day before a clinic in, actually in Pennsylvania, and this is a long time ago now. This is like 6 years ago now. And Riata she's always leaned on me and whatever, and, you know, um, and I've worked through that now. Now she's an angel, but at the time she wasn't. At the time, if this is about 6 years ago, she would have been probably like 4 years old. So,
Oh yeah.
or she was 4 or 5 years old, something like that. I can't remember exactly, but I do know that I lost my temper and I smacked her with a rasp, or yeah, it was smacked with a rasp with a tool. And those of you that aren't, most everybody here listening probably knows what a rasp is, but if you don't know, the horseshoeing tool, and it's not recommended. I don't recommend it. Neither does Adam. But nonetheless, I smacked her, and I remember feeling instant remorse. I felt really bad. She looked at me like, "What the heck did you just do, man? Like, what? Who even are you?" And I felt really bad about it. And but the point of the story was, uh, you know, I lost my temper when I could have just took a break. I could have just took a break. And the thing that really bugged me, Adam, and we talked about this before too, and I want to dive in again on it because I think it's good, is I felt like such a hypocrite and
Hmm.
like a fraud because the next day a clinic comes and I got to teach them all about all these things. And you know what I teach, the standards, the
Yeah.
high standards that I teach. I hold myself at a high standard. Because of that, I expect everybody else to hold themselves at a high standard as well. And then here I was losing my temper. I smacked her up under the belly, I'm like, and even Sky, she got after me. She said, "You knock it off. You need to go take a break." And she was really firm with me. When your wife tells you some stuff and you're like, whatever. And then other times your wife tells you stuff, you're like, oh yeah, yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Right? I was like,
Yeah.
yes, ma'am. And instantly I just felt so bad about it. You there, bud?
Yeah. These things died. I hope that sound isn't too bad.
Nope, you're good.
Okay, perfect.
You're fine. This is just fine. But anyways, I just I learned a lot from that. That's the last time I smacked one. I know that
Yeah.
because I didn't get anything out of it. But I think that's such a common thing with shoeing. I see so many people do that, where they lose their temper or whatever and go to smacking on one. And anyways, we learn from our mistakes, and hopefully my students learn from my mistakes as well. And we got into talking about this after at some point too, where like in my clinics and stuff, people will ask about bits, and I I'll recommend I'll say, well, I don't recommend you use that, for various reasons. And they'll try to sell me on whatever type of bit they're using, right? They want to talk me into it. And I'll tell them, hey, I'm telling you these things from experience. I've used that gimmick and I don't recommend it. It doesn't work the way you think it's going to work. Especially not in the style of mulemanship I teach. The stuff that we teach and we talk about, it takes a very particular set of tools and skills, and actually not very many of them. Like my tools and skills it's not like I got 1,000 different things I do. There's just a handful of different things I do, but they're extremely effective,
Mhm.
but it's that experience. And so I guess let's start with that, Adam, and go from there. What are share your thoughts on that story? We had like I said, we had a great conversation earlier about it, but share your thoughts again, bud.
Well, a lot of times, when they're leaning into you like that, it's into that hip. But what is the we touched on it too, the smacking them with the rasp. There's really nothing we get out of that ourselves. Maybe we burn up some anxiety, or it is physically stressful to us. So for us to, and I've noticed that with people starting out. I I got the pleasure. My wife, she's a great shoer, and my sister as well. They just went to shoeing school this last year, and I've noticed that just in that, at the end of a hard day, um, some of the horses, and there's been places too where uh, these horses, no one ever is tuned into them. They're a four wheeler, and these horses are so hard to work on. And I've noticed when I put them underneath those horses, they were mad, right? Like they wanted to smack them with their ass. And I used to be that way with those horses, but with attunement, I've gotten a better relationship with those certain individuals, and I don't have that anymore with them. Um, so I know exactly where you're at with that rasp, and I think in old school, where it came from was farriers maybe didn't use as much horsemanship, so bang, smash them with the rasp, and then they freeze. Right, a horse will freeze. A mule just says, if I wasn't tied to this hitching rail, you wouldn't be here, or I wouldn't. Right. So the the smacking them with the rasp. Uh, I haven't had to do that since I started following you. I've asked the question a lot differently, and mainly, if you can take your fingernail and take on the inside of the cannon bone, so it'd be on the medial side, right, and just kind of bump. You know, there was a mule that I watched you work in Elkhart, Iowa, a white mule that she was really green, and then you had to within 20 minutes you had to do demonstrations on it. And Dan Harper said, "Watch this. This is going to be good." And the way you were asking that mule, it had to be such a sped up deal. It wasn't like one of yours that it it knew because all the little times you put into it. But this was so you had to ask real quick and bumping, so kind of like the release was already in there. And I guess I implemented that into this asking them for their foot. And if you can bump that skin, kind of bump, bump, bump with your fingernail, it simulates maybe a fly bite. I don't, maybe it's harder in the fly bite. But pretty soon after a while, even these hard horses that are jerking on you, you go over by that foot, nice and easy, and they pick it up and they're setting it in your hand. And I guess I take pride in that, seeing the horse do that. But also some of these horses that we work on, um, if you can if you can give them a break. So let's say they pull on you just a little bit, and they pick the other one up once you set that one down. Go back to that other foot. There's some of these horses that we've had to drug most of their life, and once I can kind of let them talk a little bit like that, it really, pretty soon you don't need the drugs. And it's just building that relationship. If it's just a smack and beating on them, they don't really want to be there, and they're not going to enjoy it as much as you either. So I guess that's where that philosophy has really helped me in my shoeing and patience. Actually, extreme ownership, I just realized comes into that. I've got a barrel horse trainer, and she always says, she's like, I can't, I would smack him. Oh, okay, well, I don't. And the funny part of it is one of them will kick at me, right? And I've heard you say that before, and I can't remember if it was Ray Hunt said it. If a horse bites or kicks you, if you go to beating on them, you just justified that you were a threat. So when one does kick at me, you just ignore it and go back in there. And she's always like, "Well, gosh, I just smack him," you know. If you ignore it and go back in there like it doesn't matter, I say, "Oh, I'm sorry," you know, extreme ownership. Like that was actually my problem that you kicked at me, and it probably was because you went in there a little bit too bracy. You got braced back. So I guess that's probably not the same thing we talked about earlier, but um,
That's all right.
it's kind
We'll
of
just treat earlier as a warm up conversation for just me and you.
yeah,
And I enjoyed it. But yeah, I love the whole principle of extreme ownership.
yeah,
I love that. Fan of Jocko Willink and his podcast, and his books, on extreme ownership. Great. But
right.
it's really hard to apply extreme ownership, Adam. Like
Yeah.
that's really good for you when you get kicked at to say, "Hey, oh, sorry, horse. That's on me. You know, I should have prepared you better. I should have warned you that I'm coming. I should have set you up for success." And imagine how wonderful the mule and the whole equine world would be if everybody took extreme ownership. I mean, just the whole world itself. How wonderful would it be if everybody took extreme ownership, you know?
Mhm.
And if that's really how we lived, it would be amazing. But with the mules, at least, and the horses, that's so good for you. When you recognize that, you're like, oh, I see that I bothered you. You know,
Yeah.
that's on me. Let me help you see things a little differently, and let me help you out through that. And but having that empathy too for them, you know, that realizing, you know, they're not kicking me just to be a jerk. They're
Mhm.
kicking me because they're uncomfortable or they're out of balance or both, or you know, they're basically not peaceful. If they were peaceful and comfortable, well, they wouldn't kick. It's simple as
Sometimes it's
that.
in the person holding them too, right?
Oh yeah,
Like,
you deal with that. See, like at least with me in a clinic, if somebody's having trouble, really, I can say, "Hey, let me see your horse or your mule," and then it's
yeah,
just me and the horse, the mule at that point, right?
yeah,
But
yeah.
for you, you have to deal with the owners there. I mean,
But
and this could be a great lesson for everybody listening too, Adam, is, you know, how can you be a good owner standing there for the shoer, right?
sit on a bucket with your phone and
Yeah, go
totally.
away.
Yeah, yeah. Well, no, I've had that. Well, probably a family member before sitting on a bucket with their phone, and I'm like, okay, this isn't gonna work. But it is a lot of times. Uh, there's so many times I could just tell you so many, but I started saying, something really not very bracy. Of instead of like, hey, I'm gonna train your horse and charge you for it. I just ask him, can I dance with him for a minute? And they're like, yeah, I don't even want to be around him. Here you go. Probably same with you, right? In the clinic. And if you can just go and disconnect them hinds and get them flowing a little bit and then maybe move the fronts, that's hard to do because a lot of these horses haven't seen that stuff, which actually becomes pretty fun too because then it's fresh, nobody's wrecked it. But once you get their feet moving just a little bit and then the reward is stand there and hold their feet up, it's crazy. You eliminate that person that's causing most of the issue and you can literally drop that rope. If you're super in tune and 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 pick up on those things, you can almost drop that rope immediately and trim that horse. Some horses are pretty bracy, and they just keep moving around. You got to bring the owner back in, but there is a lot of times, or just schedule it when they're not home too. Sometimes that's the best case. And it's
Yeah,
not saying it's bad; it's just they have a different horsemanship style. So
well, that's hard for you. See, you know, I'm pretty blessed, I guess. I think so. I believe I am because I kind of have my little bubble of horsemanship and mulemanship, you know, and so obviously everybody that comes to my clinic usually is into or at least receptive to what I'm trying to teach. Usually, not always, but usually. Where in your business you have clients of all different disciplines and backgrounds and standards.
yeah,
Um, but I mean, part of what you do also, like to get, you know, continual clients and return clients and customers is, you know, you're setting your standard.
mhm.
Um, you shared with me about a particular barn you have to work at that is a very negative environment. Talk about that a little bit. Like, how do you bring your standard to your clients and customers?
Oh yeah,
How do you do that?
that's hard. And there's the one barn I was really thinking of. I don't work there anymore, but it was like a not jumping barn maybe. But anyway, you could walk in and tell nobody wanted to talk to you, right? And that's sad that a beautiful place like that could be that way. But simply, and I practice this at convenience stores and different places, and I need to get some more other questions. But Hey, how are you doing today? That's huge. And in our this well yesterday at church, even pastor talked about it. The smallest moments you can share the love of Jesus. You don't have to invite them to church and the whole works. That just gonna go, no, that's not for me. But you can share just how many of those people get asked, how are you actually doing today? What's the favorite part of your day? And you'd be surprised. It really brings you together with just people. And at your clinics is the same way though. One thing I admired about you the first time I met with you, I said, "How do you remember everybody's name?" And I go, "Oh, it's photographic memory for some reason." And that's huge. That makes the difference in the clinic setting. And I guess we take that into our horseshoeing as well. You come back and you're like, "Oh, Paris, she's pretty negative." And if you can just come in there and ask him, ask him pick up your foot, they stomp it down. Just take it all into account. There might be them. You can feel them when they're looking at something. There might be a cat crawling down the wall, and there's so many things you got to take into account. And if you don't, you're at risk, and it's just not fair to the equine either. I think I kind of went off there a little bit, but
Very
it
good, bud.
no one one really cool thing I don't remember where I got this the other day. I think it was a podcast. I listened to a devotional podcast every morning, and this helped a lot. He uses the word think. Maybe you've heard it, but if this goes on account to what you're saying, so just to keep that positive vibe and stuff going. So think. The T stands for true. Is it truthful? And H is helpful. Can it be helpful to that person you're talking to? I is inspiring. N is necessary. And K is kind. You know, if it fits those parameters, then it's probably worth talking about. But otherwise, there's a lot of stuff that we don't have to we don't actually have to talk about all our feelings all the time. It goes along with being around people that like-minded, positive. We're really thankful for these podcasts because you bring such great people. I can't remember all the names, but just planting a little bit of that positive seed in people, it's crazy. And also the faith. When we're oh, there it is. Sorry, not to change off and look at my notes, but
Okay, bud.
this also came from church. That peace of God and our spiritual life is where it should be. That peace leaks out to others around us. And, I believe that's exactly at your clinics. That's one of the biggest things that for me, because, day one, we all bring these critters in and they're anxious, we're anxious. But you stand in the middle and just suck that up. And then it comes out as positive, like, hey, we're going to do this. It gets better.
Yeah. Well,
One of my favorite.
it's kind of handy for me though, because I know that that's the case. Like I know that we can do that, and I'm sure that some people come to the clinic and yeah, the first day is is wild, it's a cluster. And but it doesn't bother me because I know it's going to work out. I can see where this is going to go. This is going to be fine. And this is nothing new, nothing special, and one of my favorite things, Adam, and people can take this better or the worse. I mean it in a positive way. Definitely. You know me. It's always positive way.
Yeah.
But when people are having a struggle with some of the stuff I teach, whatever. They're having a hard time doing it. And they're like, I just can't do it. This is just, I just can't do it. I'm like, what makes you think you're so special that you can't get this done? And they look at me often like, Excuse me?" They're like,
It,
no, really. Why do you think you're so special that you can't get this done? Everybody else has got this done. Why can't you do this? The stuff that, like in my clinics, it's basic stuff. This is not like crazy hard rocket science stuff. It's basic. And so when people struggle with it, I say, well, why do you think you're so special? You can do this. Everybody can do this. And, you can liken that to, I'm sure, in your world of working with a horse to pick up its feet, to stand quiet, to be shod. And, they're moving around and, the mule says, I can't stand still. What makes
yeah,
you so special? You don't think you can stand still? Everybody can stand still. That you can do this, but just like my students in my clinic and you with your horses, we have to show them the way to get those results. How can we do it? And
yeah.
coming at it from that perspective, I think helps a lot. And first impressions are a big deal.
Hmm.
Like for me, that when you guys, I really, and this is hard, Adam, this is really hard, but I really try and strive for, I want people to feel comfortable within the first 15 minutes
Oh
of the
yeah.
clinic. And now that's people might think 15 minutes. I'm like, well, I need a little bit of time. You gotta give me a little bit here. All right. Like I can't say 5 minutes because that'd be impossible. But if I can get people comfortable in 15 minutes and ready to go, then we're good. Like, what are some things that you do when you show up? And I'm talking Adam. What do you do when you show up to be prepared for these horses? Like because when you approach that horse, that's their first impression of you. What are you
Oh yeah.
doing to get ready to even say hello to that horse?
It's it just comes natural, and actually it's weird you asking that question because it's similar to earlier you said you went to some clinics that nobody knew you and you had to kind of humbled.
Yeah.
So this kind of brings that back. Um, and that's one of my favorite parts because you see these horses that have pushed on you and or other people all their life, and then here you are, you show up, and they're like, "Well, who the heck do you think you are?" And it's really just in your presence. And so many of those horses, it's no different than a bolting mule. You know, you actually just have to make those questions smaller. So one of my favorite things is walking up to the horse and he's expecting you to grab that foot and jerk around. And I just talk to the person and watch that horse. And one of my favorite things is just a fingertip on the forehead and that's it. Or even on the shoulder, kind of from the wither down. I don't go in there slapping and patting them. And if you think about all that, it's a little confusing. Some of these horses are the dull and pushy ones. Think about how many cues that they need to know. So, like your mule, you put these things in there where okay, rein position, seat position, and leg, and they know it, right? What about these other ones that we come in there and we just literally hang our bodies off of them, hugging them, and just smacking them? I've seen some people, when they pet them, they smack them as hard as they can. What does that critter have to understand in its brain? Like, if ours did it, they would be moving, right? The,
Mhm.
they're like, oh no, this means move over that way. But these all of a sudden have to stop and just. So you walk into that with these new horses. Some of my favorite ones are at the college. We'll get like they have 12 babies every year, and it's maybe a little bit. She takes it maybe a little negative because I say I love these babies. You take 5 minutes with each of them and just let them move. That's another one of the things. Um, is if they're anxious, they need to move their feet. If you just plaster them against a stall and hey, here we're gonna muscle you through, that's not gonna work. I mean, you might get it done today, but it's not the next. We're looking at the next 30 years. Like, how can we make this better? You want to move? Just move. But these babies, nobody has touched them yet, right? Like you appreciate that.
Yeah.
They have very small human influence and they're not pushy. And you can practice this horsemanship. Little stud colts are really easy because they're biting each other in the legs, right? So they're really sensitive on their front feet to pick them up. You can just barely flick that skin in there, and they are picked up, maybe biting at you. But that's that's kind of where I probably practiced it the most was on them babies, and then you just got to kind of increase it, but if they're older pushy horses. But I guess your back to your question, your stance says a lot, and your confidence. If you can come in there confident, and even these owners, right? They meet you for the first time, and we had just moved here this summer, so I get to meet all these new people, new horses, and that's very humbling. Um, Nobody knows who you are. They just have past experience with their last farriers, and I've had some call and be like, "Hey, we got 10 head if you can show up." Like, oh, I've never even talked to you before, and that's what you want as your first impression. That's kind of sad. and and I've almost not worked for some of them just with that, but um, they've had people that they've had farriers that just won't show up and won't call them back, and the area that we've came into, they just they just don't have structure. They're like, well, call me whenever you need it, and that's fine. Some people's business works great that way, but it ends up that you're busy. You're out 3 weeks and can't get there. Well, then you got to find somebody else. We've had a really good time, and it takes a lot of anxiety out of it. Is just set that structure up. Like we show up and we'll do the job, and just that confidence. That the people are not as nervous. You can watch their faces come down, and when we get done, we hand them a card for the next appointment, and that can change. Make a plan and make it flexible. But that has been appreciated more than anything else. They're like, you actually schedule. What if it's rainy that day? Oh, well, you have a barn we can do it in. Well, what if it's windy? We're still in a barn. There's so many excuses people have had before us that it's fun. It's fun seeing that, but it's also sad. Like these people, and just with that, you set a standard. A lot of that crazy drama goes out the window, and the reality of it is you want these type of people in your clinics. You set that standard. If people don't like it, they don't come. If but the people that are drawn to it and want that respect between them and their meal, and um, that's who you end up getting. And if you just made it accommodating to everyone, you wouldn't get as many people as you want, like minded, probably.
Yeah. The standards are important. As you're talking about this, well, you know me. I relate everything to mulemanship and horsemanship. So I'm I'm thinking, you know, all these new clients of yours, these are all new clients because you just moved.
Yeah.
Um, this is just like me when I meet new mules,
Mm,
that and they can ask me all the same questions that these people are asking you, like they're used to how other people have treated them,
hmm
and how other things have been, and then you show up with these new standards and they're like, oh wow, that's interesting, like this is good. I like this, that's the first impression I hope that I make on the mules is that, and there's so many just like these clients of yours, they're past farriers
hmm
they've let them down in multiple ways. Communication. That's what I keep hearing. Communication is the key. And you and I both know that in your business, farriers, that is a reputation that, oh yeah, farriers don't answer their phones.
Hmm.
Like that is like the stigma, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like cops and donuts. You know, like it's a stigma that is that's just out there. And so you have to do a good job of not not falling into that, you know. I got a lot of buddies that are in law enforcement, they're gonna come beat me up. But because they can, because they're not eating donuts.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
that's today's world with text messages, and I guess that's the main thing for me is it used to drive Maddie crazy. We'd be on the way to an appointment, and even I think it was where she used to work, where I met her, and I'd be like, "Hey, text Irene, we're gonna be 5 minutes late." She's like, "Ah, no, we don't have to do." Like she knows we're coming. It's fine. And that was really hard. Like text her, we're gonna be 5 minutes late, and you wouldn't believe the people. They're like, uh, I've never had that before. Like he would tell me a time, and then it could be 3 hours after, and I'm like that doesn't work.
Yeah.
I don't want you waiting here for. So just that being obsessive about, hey, here's what I got going, and my buddy from Wyoming, he's really been a help to me too. He just tells him like, hey, I'm running late today. Maybe he had sick kids, or maybe he had the wife's car had a blowout or whatever, and he tells him like, hey, here's the deal. If it works, fine. If it doesn't, that's right. Just being real to people.
Yeah. Yeah, having that integrity and that honesty. It's the same thing with the mules. Like just be real to them. You know, there's so many people that work them with like an ulterior motive.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like and I guess I gotta articulate what I'm trying to say here. Like, say you have a mule that is very nervous. They're very touchy. They're very scared. Okay, well, we need to work them from where they're at.
right.
Um, but I'm not going to be all slow and like tiptoeing around there all the time. In fact, I'm just going to be myself because this is what they have to get used to. Now, I will adjust to fit them. So say I'm walking by with the saddle and I'm going to go saddle up the other mule and I got to pass by this scared mule. Okay. So I'm walking out of the tack room. I got my saddle and I see that mule's eyes get big and they get bothered and they want to pull back. Okay. I'm going to adjust to fit the situation at that point. I might pause and let the mule like identify what's happening here. I might just go wide around them, but I'm gonna adjust to fit. But that doesn't mean
Mhm.
I'm gonna stop packing my saddle by them. You know,
Yeah,
like I'm not gonna, oh, no. This mule's scared of saddles. Don't go by it with saddles.
yeah,
I'm gonna be real. Hey, mule, saddles are gonna be part of your life. Like, welcome to the Evans family. You're gonna wear a saddle, okay? And it's just the way of life around here. Everybody wears a saddle, everybody gets used. Um, I understand that scares you, but we're gonna work on that. But I'm not gonna tiptoe around them. And those ulterior motives, I think they can read through it, and so can your clients that you're talking about.
yeah.
They can see that. And um, what are some things? What are some things from your perspective that owners could do more to prepare their mules and their horses for you? So and I want to go, well, I got to go deeper with you on how you prepare yourself too, but let's stick with the question right now, I guess. So, what are some things that the owners can do to actually have these animals prepared when you do show up? Like, what do you like to see? Do you like to catch them yourself? Do you like them to have them caught? What is your preference?
The best thing is if they can have them caught and standing there. And I've had some, they go out and they clean all the feet out, and that can be great. The that one specifically that used to clean all the feet out. There's if they don't have the same standard, you might they might be training them into being kind of a turd. So that's probably one of the biggest things is just have a standard. Like enjoy the horse standing there good. And I don't, to be fair, I don't think there's enough education on that. Same with mulemanship and horsemanship is there's a lot of that stuff that got lost, especially here in this area. They were plow animals. We didn't have the vaqueros and the as much livestock as what. Um, so I think we've lost a lot of that and just basic knowledge. Um, but having that thing used to being there and standing there tied, and there's safety factors too, right? If we got trim in the same pen, it's helpful if they can all be tied up. Um, there's I just can't get. There's a couple of them that are stuck in my head, and I can't get them out. Um, some just like to fight with you, so that makes it hard when the.
I'm talking about people or the animals.
How many of those people anymore? There used to be, but the animals, and really, you touched on in St. Croix at your masterclass meeting. Really, I need to be better at putting a little more time into that animal, and maybe taking it away from that client and I have did that, at specific places, but I've got some, that they just yell and jerk on the lead rope, right? You're like, holy crap, he almost just took me out because he jerked and you jumped and
Yeah.
in that case, you just adapting something that, hey, maybe you can stand over there, me and this horse will be trimming over here and we can still talk. But there's just so many variables to it. It's hard. And the dogs, most of these horses have been used to dogs. Where you really get in trouble is um, this trigger stacking, and you can feel them animals that are gonna blow up, and then that dog runs past the door or causes a fight, and I think that's where most or a lot of the accidents happen is where these horses are operating in such a high nervous system already, and they can't handle, the cat getting stepped on or whatever. And if we can just getting them down into that better thinking, better mindset, I think would be probably number one.
Yeah, that's a hard question I asked you because there's so much to it.
Yeah.
Like, well, it's kind of like my story sharing with you earlier. Like here I am teaching about good mulemanship and good horsemanship, and before that clinic, I smacked my mule with a rasp. You know,
Right. Right.
that's not going to help all my mulemanship. That is going to be a deterrence to it. So I need to be able to handle those feet with the same standards that I'm expecting my mule to learn how to turn and stop, and the same standards I'm the same level of communication that I'm using while I'm riding. I should use that same level of communication while I'm handling their feet or anything else. You know how much horsemanship I see go to the garbage can when people take their mules to the vet? Like I'll have people they'll tell me and I've had a great vet my actually my whole life until just barely. He just retired.
Oh,
And he was my dad's vet even before I was around. So I've had this vet for 35 years, like and I realize I have been spoiled because I hear so many other stories. People take their animals to the vet, and I get it. And it's like you too. You show up, you have a job to do. You get paid based on putting shoes on those feet. I
mhm.
get it, right? And the vet, they get paid by getting that dewormer down their throat or giving them that shot or patching up the wound, whatever, right?
Right.
There's a job to be done, but I'm talking about the people. They'll throw away so much good mulemanship to hurry up and just get that over with,
Mhm.
and I want to tell them, hey, this whole thing needs to flow together, we really have to take a holistic approach to this whole thing. The same standard that we work with the horseshoer, the same standard we work with a vet, same standard we ride, all the things. Like they need to flow good. And not to beat too much, pun intended, beat too much on that example from before with Riata. It's a bad joke. That's a dad joke right there, Adam.
That's all right. We all
But
got them.
not to hit on that so hard is it's but really that taught me a lot of lessons that hey, you know what? Life mulemanship is lifemanship. There was a time too for me, I'm going off on tangents here, but it's all right. It's my show. Um, where I've realized that I've talked so much about, hey, this is how we should treat the mule. This is how we should communicate with them. But then I realized that I'm really bad at communicating with other people.
Mm,
You know, I've I've had to work on my temper a lot. I think generally, well, and I'm not going to compare myself to others because we're all different, but generally, um, I haven't had a lot of patience most of my life. I really haven't. Like I'm not a patient person, which is funny because people say, I can't tell you how many times, Adam, I've been told that I'm the most patient person somebody's ever met.
I get the same thing.
And I'll say, yes, I am patient because this is what I've really focused on, right? Here I am.
Hmm.
I have really, really worked on it with a mule. And I have put a lot of effort into it. And it takes a lot of effort. It kind of makes me, speaking of patience and tempers, it makes me mad when people say, "Oh, he's just naturally patient." No,
Hmm.
I'm not. Not at all. Like zero. That is not accurate whatsoever. I've had to be really, really thoughtful about it, about being patient with the mules, and I've gotten good at it. And I'm not being prideful saying that. It's just matter of fact. I'm good at being patient with the mules. I am.
Yeah.
But when that GPS says recalculating in my truck, oh boy, you know, I'm gonna lose it. I promise you. But
Yeah.
my point with sharing that mulemanship is a lifestyle. You got to live it, and it's across the board. And I feel for you in your career. And I guess part of my mission in life is to help people be better all around, so that when guys like you do show up to do your job of shoeing a horse, it's going to be better for you. You
Oh
know
yeah.
that these people have held that standard. We talk about feel. And you
Hmm.
and you've heard me talk about feel in clinics, and it's a big thing we teach in our master class and all that business. But like most people, when you think of feel, they're thinking of what the human is physically feeling. Like, well, I feel sad or I feel happy or I feel texture with fingers. Like I feel, oh, it's rough or it's soft, or they can talk about feel in regards to like a rain, like I pulled this much or this much effort. But I also like to define feel as what you're putting out, what's coming out of you to the animal, what is happening there.
Oh
And
yeah.
you mentioned it a little bit about picking up feet, how you pick up a foot makes a difference. Everybody's like, well, I want them to pick up their foot. Okay, well, how are you asking them? Like, well, are you asking them or are you telling them? Like,
Right.
how are you even approaching that? And I'm thinking about the feel that I'm outputting nowadays more so than the feel I'm getting back, because
Yeah.
I know if I can't offer it, I'm not going to get it.
There's some good tests for that. I was at a horseshoeing clinic a couple years ago. Actually, when Maddie was in shoeing school, my wife, and I thought I had pretty good, feel to my hand. Like what am I putting out? Then they took a hoof tester, the big clamp, and like, hey, go to your neighbor. And I didn't pick my wife. It was this guy from Canada, and 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 just squeeze the fingernail and tip of their finger, right? Well, do this every day. Like this is nothing. Okay. Went over to this dude, patient, and he like screamed. What the heck? What's the matter? That hurt. That there's no way that could have hurt. He goes, dude, that really hurt. Wow. Maybe I actually suck at doing that, right? But it took a human to be able to tell you that, and what the exercise was doing was, hey, if we do that to a horse that's sore, like you might not get another chance. So it was really fun and I guess that was probably my biggest thing on like feel of what you're putting out.
What about like, so here's another something similar to that. So we've already mentioned it. You'll have the owners holding, a lot of
Yeah.
times they'll be holding the mule or the horse when you're working on them, right? I've had this experience, particularly in my groundwork classes, where the animal is clearly uncomfortable with their human. And this can manifest itself in lots of ways. Sometimes
Mhm.
they're pushy, sometimes they're avoidant, sometimes they want to bolt, sometimes they want to push the person over, whatever. Um, but I'll where this I've really seen this a lot is like I will work on somebody's animal. So I'm doing some groundwork with that animal. Okay, I'll whatever, right? And then I'll go to hand the lead rope back to the owner, and I feel the tension in the owner, like
Uh-huh.
how they take a hold of that rope. And there's so many times I'm like, oh, whoa, 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 whoa. And you probably even maybe have seen me do this with people because
Yeah.
it happens all the time. And they'll go to take that rope back, and they grab it so firmly and with so much energy. I'm like, hold on, before I even let them take the meal. I'm like, whoa, 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 we got to fix that
Yeah.
because the meal's going to go right back to what it was doing when it feels that, like I can feel the anger flowing through that lead rope, or fear. I can feel the fear too. I can feel
Yeah.
anxiety through that rope, you know. The rope, and you've seen me use it lots of times in my clinic, is a great tool for teaching people because I like to use tree line rope, especially a tree line
Mhm.
rope, man. It's got so much feel to it that like you can just feel the emotion on the other end of whatever, whether you're attached to a human or you're attached to a mule or a horse, you feel it. And I can imagine you have to deal with that a lot because you'll have the person holding an animal,
Oh yeah.
and a lot of times I've seen, and this is probably one of the worst things of where they're holding the animal, but they're actually resting the weight of their arm on the lead rope. You know what I'm talking about? You see them do
Oh
that?
yeah. I just had a mounted shooter, uh, not using names or anything, but her horse was acting up, and I'm like, it wasn't this way last time. Like this was at a oh, she had it in for therapy at this place with a water treadmill, and I I'm like, well, maybe he doesn't want to be held so tight. And she was like wrapped around the halter, right? And like, don't move. And this horse was like trying to chuck her.
Hmm.
And the minute I said, just there's a lot of good things in slack and lead rope. I said, just hold that. And if she walks off, then who cares? Well, she's not going anywhere. And just like that, she quit. She didn't move another time. And so many times these horses and mules are just saying, "Hey, are you checked in?" Like they're just kind of bumping your, I don't know. That kind of comes off bad too because that can be so pushy. But there are times there that it's not pushy. It's just like, "Hey, you're actually not here."
Yeah. Would you prefer him to be held or tied up or just standing with the lead rope down? Like, what's your preference?
It If they got the right mindset, standing with a leader up down,
Yeah.
like, and there's so many. This was our anniversary. What was it? 2 years ago. I've got some really good friends, and I had quit shoeing for them before because they had Appaloosas, right? And I had this stigma in my head of Appaloosas are terrible because they're actually they're a lot like mules. They kind of demand some respect, and if you don't use your horsemanship. But the first time I met George, he just passed away last year, but they go out elk hunting in Colorado, and first time I met him, boom, four shoes. Never had shoes on. I'm like, this is not good. Like he's a strong-headed horse, and I tried. I'm not good with a rope and like tying up a leg because I never wanted to do that. So that day years ago, I tried that, and it wasn't gonna work. And you couldn't shoe him, and you're gonna have to drug him. So the next time, I said, all right, this was January 20th, and June 20th, and I said, you know what? It's our anniversary. We're going over there, and we're gonna shoe those horses for their trip. And I don't care. George is mine all day long. right? And the minute you take that and say, I don't care how long it takes, we're just going to work on it, it goes a lot faster and better. In the last 2 years here, because I took him away from the people and just worked him. You know, anytime that he wanted to move his foot and really jerk, I just moved his feet, and you could see him just melt. I dropped that rope, and all I do is just stand on it. You know, as I was working, I go back to the anvil and I had it strung out that way, and I just stand on it. And anytime he moved, just moved his feet, and he just got like a dog. He was just so gentle, and he still would pull around on the back feet a little bit, but as long as you gave him his freedom, he's like, yeah, I'll do this. Some of those horses have been the best in my horsemanship. Really, just learning. Um, they're willing to teach you, aren't they?
Oh yeah.
Like Tim ones are just
Yeah, if you can have the mindset to be a student in those moments, it makes a difference.
yeah.
Um, I like to always be learning. Like I and this is something else I've really strived to cultivate in myself. Probably the last, I don't know, 15 years really is learning. And I wasn't a bad student, but I wasn't a great student in grade school.
Yeah.
And now I know it was mostly because I wasn't interested in it at all. You know,
Hmm.
that's part of the reason we homeschool is so we can cultivate interest as well, along with our schedule, right? Like with our kids. But like looking back on my school, I wasn't a bad student or anything. I just didn't care. And
Hmm.
then I get out of school and I can finally learn stuff that I want to learn. And now, man, I love it, you know. And so when stuff comes up like that, I'm thinking, all right, what can I learn from this? You know, what do I need to learn from this? And it's challenging to get that, you know. A deeper concept of that is what is God trying to teach me from this?
Oh, that's
Um, and that's deeper, you know, and usually harder to answer. You know that I usually don't find the answers to that till way later on, right? It's like when I
yeah.
got hurt, Adam. I had a horse flip over backwards on me, and I busted my femur, and then it kicked me in the head, and couldn't ride for quite a while. Uh, that's the one I was telling you about that I couldn't ride for, you know, like 4 months, and I didn't really get back to the training until like 6 months, but. Um, you know, I remember at the time thinking like when I got hurt, why me? You know, the boohoo crybaby, why me? Like, why me? You know, and it's interesting how things change though, because it was at that time that I really started trying to figure out this whole mule deal, you know, like what I want to do. I want to train. I want to train mules, you know, and I want to do these things. And looking back now, a lot of blessings came out of that.
Mm,
A lot of blessings came out of that. And I'll have plenty of people, and I've had cut this conversation with people where they'll argue, well, it's not that God had a plan for you, it's that you worked hard and you changed through your perspective. I don't I don't agree with that. To me,
no.
I'm gonna acknowledge my blessings when I see them, when I can recognize them, because I'm sure there's so many that I don't recognize. You know, I know there is. I'm a blessed man for sure. Um, but it's having that mindset of learning in all that you do. How do you take that mindset into your daily life of being a student? Because you're a great student. When you come to my clinics, man, one of my favorite things about you is you have your notepad and you're taking notes. There's so many people that I'd be like, please just take a note, just write something down, and
Yeah.
they'll never take notes. But you come to my clinics and you got your notepad and your pen and you're taking notes, and I love that. So, what makes you such a great student?
I think just looking for those moments, right? You're just trying to soak it in. And we've had that with moving here. It was a question like I think even last year we talked to you like, well, we're thinking about moving, and then we were we were closer to our family back there, and I we just prayed like, man. So down where we were, we traveled a lot. I should say we traveled a lot more, but now I'm traveling more in this in between time, right? I still go 4 hours south and do a bunch of horses that we kept on. Um, but we wanted to get where things are closer together so that we could get closer to God. And so we just prayed, like, if this move is what we're supposed to be doing, help us see some signs and things. And it just got easier, and so many times I kind of go with that too, you know, not all the time, but a lot of times if it's meant to be, I mean, it's just easier too, you know, you're looking for those signs and God guides you in so many ways. And just being grateful, you talked about it. I don't remember how many years ago this was, but you had gotten into a pretty negative mindset about, just seeing the bad in situations or people, and that's helped a ton. Just looking at things and naming off some positives rather than negatives.
Oh yeah.
It that's I mean, if you take that with it, it's just like having your structure in your business. It really just falls in line, and same thing with the mule. So the mulemanship, a lot of this other stuff just disappears. You know, I had a friend, Jen Evans was at your clinic, and she was dealing with a mule that spun. Like you go to get on, she just spin a hole in the ground, and that's why they sold the mule to her in the first place. Is she did that, and they didn't like it. She asked you about it. You're like, that's simple. She's not ready to get on, and that was it. A little bit of moving her feet and just kind of getting her um, saying yes before you get on, and that cleared up that. So just finding those positive things rather than negative. And I'm not very good at that. Like sometimes I think I've been really gifted with seeing those things that could go bad before it happens, and then
Well,
that's not.
I think there's a balance that needs to be had there because with experience, so like you can look at a hoof, right? And you can say, hey, we need to do this or else
Mhm.
in 2 months, 3 months, next year, your horse is going to be crippled
Right.
because we have this happening or this happening, right? You can see the health of that hoof and you can no, it's not like you're telling the future. It's just matter of fact of, hey, this is how it usually goes, right?
Hmm.
And you could think of that as I think of that as positive. I think that's good. That's good foresight to have. That's good. That's education. That's the education that professionals like yourself and myself need to bring to our careers. We need that,
Right.
and that's what makes us good at it. Is we have the experience to be able to see it. Um, you know the negative thinking, like you mentioned a little while ago. I did get into a space at one point where and it's easy to in my business. It's really, really easy to because people come to the clinic showing you everything they're doing wrong so
Yeah.
that they can get it fixed.
Yeah.
And they want help, they want results. And before you can usually add a whole bunch of really good stuff, you kind of got to get rid of some bad stuff first. You got to clean the slate kind of first, before we can start adding things. It's hard to add upon a full jar. So we got to dump some stuff out. And it can get to where you pick and you pick and you pick on people. And I did not like that. I do not like that. I don't like picking on people.
Hmm.
And so I change it up. Whenever I see somebody, I feel pretty good about this now. Like I feel like I've worked at this a lot now, and I'm not saying I'm perfect. I got more to do, but I've improved upon it since the time that you're talking about.
Hmm.
To where somebody walks up, or a mule walks up, or a horse walks up, or my first impressions, I am really looking for something good to say, some compliment. And not that I'm trying to be a suck up to the mule or to the person,
Right.
but that the feel that you put out there when you have that mindset, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about that feel, what you're outputting. If you take a hold of that lead rope and you have a lot of negativity to you, a lot of anxiety to you, a lot of worry or stress or anger, They feel that. But if you, it's really hard for you to firm up on that lead rope when you take a hold of one or grab that hoof with a bunch of aggression. If you have a, a mindset of positivity, a mindset of gratitude, a mindset of kindness, of charity.
Hmm.
I think that's a huge thing, You and I both, are men of faith. We're trying to be better, right? We're trying to be best we can. And charity is one of the major lessons of Christianity. I mean, to be charitable. And I think that blesses us in our careers when we really execute on that, you know.
Hmm.
Um, and sometimes that charity is just like we said, just a simple recognition of something good. And it can be as earthly and as basic as, hey, that's a nice shirt you got there, Adam. I like your shirt, right? It can
Right.
be as simple as that. That's no big deal. That's not like a huge, it's not like I give you a major compliment. Like you didn't make that shirt. You know what I mean? But it nonetheless, even something as basic as that, it makes you feel good. Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
And I like to practice that with my mules on the approach too, like finding something good to say um, as I approach them. That does make a big difference in your mindset.
Yeah. My grandma's had that where she loves it when I come visit her at the nursing home, right? And I was trying to figure out like, why me? Why does everybody say, oh, she just loves it when you come? But you know what? I don't ask her necessarily how her knee is or how her hands are. I might slip that in there, but a lot of times I'm just giving her crap. She just wants some normal moments, right? Now,
Hmm.
did you take your pills and did you? And it's funny just watch her. She just, oh my gosh, I just love it when you come and I tease her, where you put your beer cans around this place, and she's never touched a beer in her life, right? But it's just it's just being real and lightening that mood with positivity is fun.
So what are some of the things that you see in your business that you'd like to back to talking about our standards, right? What are some things that you would like to see change in your business when you show up to a barn to shoot some horses or some mules or whatever? Um, what do you hope to see like something different in 10 years from now? Like what would you like to see change that's pretty common?
Oh man.
I know I just threw that question at you, but you're on your toes. You can handle it.
Yeah, yeah. I think gosh, I don't really know what I think on that deal. I'm if I was there and it was happening, it'd be easier to think about.
Like for
Um,
me, like I'll give you an example, like in my business, Adam, and then
yeah.
maybe that'll prompt you on something. For me, I would love pretty much every meal myth to die, and let's have a funeral for them for these meal myths because there's so many dumb ones. Just the stigma that I usually call them the one-time mule owners because it's usually the one-time mule owners or the person that has a friend that had one mule, you know,
Mm,
that have these myths. It's the people that are actually in it and have spent much time with the mule for real. Um, they don't have anymore, but like the myth that I hope goes away someday is, oh, you better watch out. Those mules, they'll never forget. They'll hold a grudge against you and they'll wait to get you back 10 years from now, And I
yeah.
joke with that. When I hear that one, I usually tease the person. I say, "Well, what are you doing to that poor thing that it's holding a grudge like that? Like this murderous grudge? That's like even in a human that takes a lot of stuff to make you that mad. So what are you
Right.
doing to that poor thing?" They usually chuckle. I'm like, "No, really. Like what's the worst thing that you're doing to this meal that it's going to hold that type of a grudge? If it even could, because you and I know they can't. That's
Mm,
not real. That has been scientifically dispelled, right? That's not a real thing. They don't do that. They don't have that huge, large frontal lobe that's capable of doing that. They're really small. It's just for motor movement, right? So, um, but I think where people get hung up on like that example is, well, sure, you come out there and if you have repeated behavior that you do and the mule doesn't like it. So back to, like leading with tension. If every time you lead the mule, you're all tight in your hands and you're hanging on them, and there's a really poor feel there in the lead rope, why at some point they're not going to want to lead.
Mm-hmm.
That is a fact. Is it that they held a grudge? No. It's learned behavior. It's repetitive behavior, and they learn on the repeat. It's the same if you put your water if you move your water trough in your big pasture. Well, it's going to take them a minute to find it. They'll find it. They'll smell it, and they might go to the old water trough spot the next time they're thirsty out of repeat behavior. And then they get over there and go, "Oh yeah, oh forgot, yeah, it's over there." And they might mess up a couple times. We see this with cattle. We see this with horses out on a big pasture, and it's very common, right? So they do have a memory. They do have a great memory, but it's not like this
Mm-hmm.
grudge holding capacity. They don't have that abstract thought ability. So, like, that's one of the things that I hope changes Adam in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, whatever. And it might not, but I hope it does because there's so many weird myths about the mule. There really are. But
Yeah.
that give you time to think of something?
Yeah. I guess there's a lot of with our business, um, the tension of Farrier Day has really disappeared. When you come in there lighthearted and or just with a light attitude and positive, that they start looking forward to that day. And I guess if it could be that way for everybody, we'd maybe have more positive farriers.
Yeah.
These horses would be better, and people wouldn't have negative. Um, maybe, yeah. The biggest thing with farriers is it's hard. Like if you got to tell someone no, that's hard. And the older you get, the better and easier it is. But I think a lot of times the people that don't communicate well really, really are not good at saying no. And they're just like, well, I just hang on to it here until it kind of disappears. And if that could get better, and there's some people that call and they're like, it really doesn't matter if you come or somebody else, just let me know. And that seems to make it easier, if you do have to tell them no. But I think that's a big part of just not the poor communication. That
Yeah.
could get probably help a lot. But
So what are your plans now? You've moved. Um, is your business doing pretty good up there? You got new clients rolling in?
yeah, it's starting. We moved in July, and then everybody's kind of set up. They got their farrier for the year. But that sounds terrible, right? But actually, what's funny up here? There's the pastor introduced to me the lady at church. He's like, "Oh, Lynn, right? He's not a horse guy, and
Mhm.
this lady, she's got horses. I bet she'll use you." It was almost like when he introduced us, she's like, "Don't talk to me. I don't want to cheat on my farrier. I already have one." And that was it. That was a funny,
Yeah.
and
But
that's
yeah.
pretty, But we had an outdoor arena at the last place, and in this place, um, we're looking at that's about all that we got left to move. I've just been doing little trips when I go down to work and come back, and so hopefully this spring, March 4th, I think our baby's due. So if with being around here and closer to home with baby, um, we can get that arena up and kind of get some work on some of these horses that are getting old enough that need to. And we do have a young yearling mule. He needs a lot of work too. He just um, so get some facility that we can do that. The business has been good this winter. It's been picking up quite a bit. There's some farriers that like to go to Arizona in the winter, so that kind of pushed a few our way,
Mhm.
and you get a couple friend groups, and then it just spreads. So I don't like
Yeah.
to advertise that. Advertising means, people are kind of skeptical then, like, why is he advertising? The word
Isn't
of mouth.
that terrible that like, you want to advertise to get business, but there's a stigma out there that if you advertise, you're
Yeah,
not probably not good enough because there's such a demand for farriers right now.
yeah,
Yeah. You're in a business that it is definitely declining.
yeah.
Like it's harder and harder to get a farrier. I mean, in fact, I mean that's why I do shoe and trim my own. And
Hmm.
partly too because I'm on the road and so I can't be home regularly enough to, have somebody consistently do it. So I learned to do it myself,
That's better.
but and I'm not that great at it. Um, but I got enough of you. You give me some tips in the past and others, different things as I go around. I meet different people and I get all kinds of tips and stuff that help me, help me learn. A farrier that's taught me quite a bit. Nathan Heyer. Do you know Nathan?
I think I heard his podcast on here.
Yeah, he did a podcast with me, but yeah, he's a great farrier down there in Arizona. See,
Hmm.
he's the opposite. See, well, he stays pretty busy in the wintertime too, but like you said, a bunch of your local farriers, they go to Arizona.
Yeah.
Well, see, he gets a lot of farriers that show up to Arizona, so like
Yeah.
all of a sudden it's competition. Um, but on the other hand, there's so many people that go south for the winter. He stays busy. That's his busy season, anyways. But anyways, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on the show, bud, and I appreciate you doing the show twice.
Yeah.
Um, it's hard to remember what we talked about and what we haven't talked about, but I do appreciate you. So, but something I'd like to know before we sign off, Adam, is what's some advice you'd give to people going through this thing called life? If you could tell them, the one thing, which I know there's no such thing as the one thing, but if you could tell them one thing, what would you like to tell these listeners?
Well, I had an old friend that I used to trim for, and he was in his 80s. He's since passed, but we got to be really good friends. We're out there working on his founder ponies, and I asked him. You could see his health was declining over the years, and his name was Lowell. And I said, Lowell, what's the secret to life, right? Like what? And he thought for just a little bit, and he says, take it as it comes. That's it. Just we can think and try to plan it all out, but in the end, we just got to have faith in God that we've got a better place. This place that we're on now is temporary, and thinking that way and just living for Him and um, helping inspire people. That's that's really it.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. That's really awesome. I know faith is important to you,
Yeah,
and it affects everything in your life, and it does me too. There's so many principles that I teach in my mulemanship and my horsemanship that um, it's gospel. It's not mine. I don't take credit for it. I don't get the credit for it.
yeah,
It's gospel. And you look to those things, and they'll teach you. All these principles. These principles that we talk about. It's all It's all there if people will look, if they will
yeah.
open their eyes, right? So,
We got to create that curiosity.
yeah, that's important.
Mhm.
Well, bud, I appreciate you coming on
Yeah, thanks for inviting
twice,
me.
doing it twice. It turned out good. I like the second one better anyways. This is good. This is
Yeah,
good.
me too.
So, hmm huge thanks to our sponsors. I forgot to do that at the beginning of this one, though. I just realized. So I better do it
Yeah,
now, Adam. Got a shout out to everybody that makes this podcast free. Um, big shout out to Roman Home Tents. If you guys like a good wall tent, uh, you like to get outdoors, you like to pack, you got to go with the Roman Home Tent. They're awesome. Colt Saddlery, building wonderful custom saddles. Check them out. Also, Diamond W Enterprises, if you're looking for a good jack this spring to get that mare of yours bred up to, look up Diamond W. Uh, they do a great job. Got a good jack making good mules. And also, to our favorite meal magazines. We got Western Meal Magazine and Meals and More Magazine doing a great job. So big thanks to all those folks making this episode free for you. And if it's not too much to ask, please leave us a review. If you listen on Apple, please leave 5 stars. If you listen on Spotify, you can leave a comment these days. So that's really great. You can also rate it 5 stars on there too. So please do so. And with that, God bless you, and we will see you down the road.